welcome back to AMGA's fifth Public Policy Update. I'm Chet Speed, Chief Policy Officer for AMGA, and...
Hi, I'm Daryl Drevna, Senior Director of Regulatory Affairs at AMGA.
And now to the exciting part of our program, we're going to talk about regulations.
Excellent.
And you gave me 3 questions to ask you about the surprise billing rule.
I should know the answers.
Let's hope you do. Okay, first question is, what did the No Surprises Act do?
Sure. So the No Surprises Act was enacted at the end of last year, and there are a couple of things going on in this legislation. One, it largely bans surprise medical bills. This is if a patient goes into some sort of healthcare facility and receives services from an out-of-network provider, and all of a sudden they get hit with an unexpected bill. What this legislation does, it essentially shields them from that process. So they're not going to receive those large bills that you might see in the press and that sort of thing. And instead, it sets up a process for the payer and the provider to negotiate a settlement.
Okay. So that sounds reasonable, but what is AMGA's main concern about this?
The big concerns that we have with this regulation is that it revolves around what's called the qualifying payment amount, or the QPA. And essentially what that is, it's the in-network median rate for service or provider in a given area, right? And in and of itself, no problem with that. But what the rule does, it essentially puts its thumb on the scale and requires the arbitration process to essentially select the amount that's closest to that QPA. And the real concern is that the regulation sort of ignores congressional intent and instructs the arbitration process to essentially ignore a variety of other factors that could factor what the appropriate payment amount could be. And that's something like level of training, market share, teaching status, that sort of thing. And the way the rule is drafted and will be implemented is the process essentially ignores those factors and requires the arbitration process to select the amount that's closest to that QPA. And for a provider to come in and get a different amount, they essentially have to prove that that QPA is somehow fundamentally flawed or wrong.
That's a tough burden to overcome.
It is. It's almost like they're setting the process up so they don't want you to use it. It's almost like a predetermined outcome. By so heavily weighting this QPA, it's essentially signaling to the community, like, don't bother going through this process. You know what the outcome is going to be. So that's one problem. An even bigger problem is if you're going into a negotiation process for future contracts, everyone knows that this backstop, this arbitration process, is going to revolve around that QPA. So if I, as a payer, know that I can essentially dictate what that QPA is, that's going to influence how I negotiate future contracts.
That's a major long-term problem.
It is. It is.
So you mentioned congressional intent. I believe Congress has sort of weighed in a little bit on this, haven't they?
It is. So when this rule came out on an interim final basis, which is essentially an emergency way of doing a rulemaking. So I have some problems with that in and of itself. But Congress, the leadership of the Ways and Means Committee, and about 150 other members of Congress sent a letter to the appropriate department saying, you've completely ignored our intent behind this law. You're not implementing it the way we had instructed you to do so, by essentially discounting these other factors in favor of the QPA.
So how can this rule be improved from AMGA's perspective?
Sure. So I think they need to take another crack at this and reopen the rule, take a look at what Congress intended, and allow the dispute resolution process to play out in a more fair manner. And the way you can do that is, taking a look at what the median rate, that's appropriate, but you also need to look at market share, physician training, other factors that really go into why something is priced the way it is.
Okay. All right, well, sounds good. So, we were talking about Medicare provider cuts. We were busy, but it sounds like you were busy too.
Yeah, so this came out as an interim final rule, and I've got some concerns with that. There was no reason this couldn't have gone through the regular comment and rulemaking process. So we did that, and then, as part of the cuts that everyone was working on, CMS is going to have to recalculate the conversion factors, so that's on my plate right now.
Okay, so you'll be busy in January.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And I think, is that it?
I think so.
Okay, very good. So this is the last Public Policy Update for 2021. Thanks for watching. Have a happy holiday, a happy new year, and see you all next year. Thank you.
Thank you.